Hi everyone, Lee here. Just a quick disclaimer / update before today's episode. You may notice the audio quality on my part of the pod is not great. It appears that my USB mic wasn't getting picked up for some reason, so you've got the laptop mic, so it's not quite as good. You can still make it out. That'll be sorted for next week's episode. I do apologise for that. Also, this was recorded before Simo's press conference, so we didn't know that Jack Armour is not suspended for this weekend's game, which is great news. And obviously, Joe Garner's going to be fit as well, which is fantastic stuff as well. So just a quick couple of disclaimers there for you. Hopefully, normal service will resume next week. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the Football Club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Come blue and white and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle. The number one place to get your car out fixed in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
An unbeaten weekend for United. Just kidding. It's a horror show in Reading as the Royals put 5 past the Blues. We look back on that heavy defeat in Berkshire last week before looking ahead to this weekend's trip to the Seaside for the Illuminations in Blackpool. Well, it's a good job there are a few more things to look forward to in Blackpool at the moment, Mike, for us, because on the pitch, it's not looking that great right now, is it? I think it's fair to say.
No, but it's peak Carlisle United, isn't it? That we sort of put up a decent spirited display against Charlton that you could argue we could have nicked and then just fall apart against, no disrespect to Reading, but a lesser side.
I think that's just factual, isn't it? They're just not as good a side as Charlton, and they didn't look as good a side as Charlton even in that game, which is, I think, the thing that frustrates us the most, really. You know, it just was a case of a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show almost. Maybe not quite to the same extent you normally think with that, but yeah, it wasn't great viewing, I think it's fair to say.
But if anything, though, I'm actually, and this might sound daft, but I'm actually maybe a bit grateful that we lost 5-1 than a scrappy 1-0 defeat, because it's a real wake-up call. I think if we'd lost 1-0, we'd maybe just carry on as usual, but 5-1, we need to sort it out, basically.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right, Mike. It's a fair point. That I think a few people have said that. I think they were quite aware already, to be honest, weren't they? Really, it just showed, like I said, it just shows how thin the squad is at the moment, and there's sprinklings of quality in there, but just not enough depth. And there's a few players who just haven't made the step up, but that's just a simple fact of the way it is.
Yeah, and there's not enough in the way of a plan B when things aren't going right.
No, last season we had those options, didn't we, off the bench? We could tweak things around in terms of pushing Medish into midfield, and we're just not getting that option at the moment simply because we're playing with 4 at the back, so it doesn't really give us the chance to do it, does it? So there you go. Well, let's get into them. We've got a few bits to cover this week, obviously. We'll have the news coming up in a second, then obviously looking back on the Reading game and looking ahead to Blackpool away, including a chat with an opposition pod, as usual. Before that, just to remind you, this season, once again, the pod is being sponsored by the Carlisle United Supporters Club, London branch, for the 3rd season in a row. We really appreciate the support they give us. It's fantastic in terms of helping us with the hosting for the pod, so you guys can access it on as many different platforms as possible. Yes, the London branch do some fantastic stuff for the club in terms of fundraising, in terms of, I think they bought some equipment recently for the medical department. I think they've done it a couple of times in recent seasons. They arrange a lot of stuff in terms of away games as well for XL supporters, so travel and tickets and stuff like that. If you want to find out more about them, you can go to the website carlisle.londonbranch.org, and you can join them wherever you're from in the world. If you're in Jacksonville, Florida, as we keep saying, you can join them from there. If you're from Timbuktu, you can do it from there. Any other places, Mike, you want to throw out there?
Nauru, which is the most obese country in the world.
Thanks for that. That's a great one, that one. But there you go. Yes, right. So let's look ahead to... let's look back at the news, should I say, first. Not a huge amount to cover, just a few little bits in there. First up, a couple of the main bits. United have finally received their punishment for the pitch invasion after the game against Bradford City in the playoffs, Mike. And it's a fine, but probably not as big a fine as we expected, maybe, for this.
Yeah, it's one of them. I've seen a few people saying, "Oh, are they fining every club that has had a pitch invasion during the playoffs?" But we'd had a few other things before the playoffs that we'd had tellings off for. So,
And I
Yeah.
think, to be fair, Sheffield Wednesday, I think, have been fined. I think, or maybe Barnsley or someone. I'm sure someone else was fined as well. And their fine was actually bigger than ours. I think I've seen a couple of clubs fined around about the 30k mark, if I remember rightly. The fine we've got is £5,000, of which 2,000 has been suspended. So it's actually a £3,000 fine, unless something else happens, obviously, in the future, in which case it will automatically trigger that extra 2,000. The official report into it is actually quite interesting reading. They do say United actually put a lot of prep into trying to avoid things, but obviously didn't do quite enough. But they also sort of note that the pitch invasion was generally, a well, good intentions is the wrong word, but well, what's the phrase? Good natured pitch invasion, wasn't it really? Which it was, to be fair. There wasn't any bother given to the Bradford players, and just a bit of gentle joshing with the Bradford fans, really, wasn't it? So.
Well, I think some of the Bradford fans were claiming things were thrown in their end, weren't they? But,
I think that was during the game rather than.
Oh, that's all right. Then that's fine. Yeah,
it's fine. Completely acceptable, then, isn't it? Really, there you go. No, but yeah. So there you go. £3,000 fine, effectively, with 2,000 more suspended. And yeah, just got to make sure it'll be air vessels in the future, which generally we have this season. There's not really been too much bother us, so it's been good so far.
But there hasn't been much in the way of last minute winners and this and that and the other that normally makes people run on the pitch and what have you.
No, that's very true indeed, very true. Little bit of news in terms of the Sports Trust, Mike. They had their AGM the other week. Where 4 new directors were voted onto the board, and they all 4 are new. In fact, there was 2 existing directors were up for re-election, but also there was a space left, I think, by Frank Beattie's resignation, and Malcolm Nugent chose to retire, didn't he? I think at the end of his latest spell as director. On the director, board member, I should say, on the Kiosk board. Both Nigel Davison and Carol Mitchell, the existing directors, they failed to get re-elected, alongside Richard Mullen, who also stood for the board, and Jared Gornall. Neither of those 2 made it on. And the 4 that made it on were Martin Robson, Claire Winder, Mike Devlin... I got his name wrong.
Denivellis,
thank you. I was about to go and look it up there. I apologise, Mike. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I should really know better, shouldn't I? Mike Denivellis and who have I missed up? Ross Parkinson.
Ross Parkinson. He's going to be fuming with you for forgetting that.
Oh dear God! Right. Anyway, so those 4 made it to the board. Congratulations to all 4 of them. I'm sure they're all going to do great jobs in terms of working with Kiosk. And Kiosk have done some great things over the years, and all the best to Nigel and Carol for the work they've done down the years as well with Kiosk. There've also been some changes on the board, hasn't there? Because Nigel was the 1921 board representative for the Sports Trust, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Billy Atkinson is the director on the Holdings board, isn't he? He obviously still is a member of the Kiosk board, and he retains his place on the Holdings board. So stepping up to take the role as fan director is Matt Spooner. He's taken on the role with Dave Noble as the alternative. So well done to both of them. And one of our own parish is now the chair of the trust, isn't he? Mr. McLennan himself, Dan McLennan. Congratulations, Dan. He's been voted to be the new chair of the trust, as Matt has stepped down from that role so he can take on the fan director role. And the vice chair is Claire Winder, one of the new members. So fantastic stuff all around to all those guys. And it's an exciting time, isn't it, for the trust? Over 1,200 members now, which, I've seen a few people, I have to mention this in the pod now, sort of decrying a little bit the election, the AGM stuff, and saying, only 480 voted on it. It's a terrible turnout.
It's a hell of a lot of a higher turnout than previous years. It's
much higher than previous years. In some of the previous years, the turnout was around about 15, 16%, maybe, if that. This is a turnout of just over 40%, I think. That's more than the turnout was for the Cumberland election. At the brand new Cumberland Council last year had less people turning out in terms of percentage for that. And that's for local politics. That's things that really genuinely do matter. I know to a lot of people Kiosk will matter, but it's nonsense to suggest that. Considering as well that the membership numbers have pretty much trebled in the last few years as well. I think some people just need to wind their necks in a little bit on this kind of thing, just because maybe the people they wanted in didn't get in, whatever. So
yeah, I think so. I think Mike Delavellis said on Radio Cumbria the other day that, because he was on the board a few years ago and he's been off it since, but I think he said that the last time he got on, he got about 40 votes. and then
Yeah.
this time we got over 200.
Yeah.
So and hopefully, and they've all talked about growing the trust membership, because it has, like you said before, it's trebled, and if we can get it, it's about what, 1,200 now.
It's just over 1,200, yeah.
Yeah,
About 1,000 were eligible to vote, because there's family members who are kids who are under 18 who can't vote. Now, so basically about 400 odd voted, which, it's a great turnout, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, and if we can keep on growing the membership, because 1,200 as a percentage of match attending fans isn't a lot, but
It's better than it was.
Yeah, it is better than it was, and hopefully we can keep growing. And I remember when Dan was trying to get on, he sort of said that they were going to aim for 1,000, and a few people thought that was thought that was unrealistic. So now 2,000, why not?
Yeah, I mean, look, if things are going great off the pitch as well in terms of what the Piatics are trying to do, there's every chance you get involved in sports, just you can influence what happens, because they are listening to them. There's no doubt about that. They've played a big role in terms of getting this takeover done. So, yeah, it's really good to see. And yeah, like I said, good luck to all the guys involved in that. Just a few of a little bits of news to fit in before we go into the Reading review, putting off as long as we can. Fleetwood tickets are on sale. By the time you listen to this, they probably will have sold out, I'd have thought. There was only maybe a couple of dozen left, I think. I think the problem with this one has been that I think because we only had 1,200 tickets, I think a lot of people thought they were going to sell out pretty much on the first day, didn't they? So a lot of people just didn't bother, because we've got 3,400 season ticket holders now, I think, something like that. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's the point in doing that? So yeah, I think like most fans were expecting they were going to sell out on that first day, and as a result, they haven't. So there's been a few left over until now. So look, if we'd had about 2,000 plus tickets, I think we'd have sold them out probably quicker, bizarrely in a weird roundabout way.
It's one that a lot of our fans still haven't been to, because it's the first time we've ever played Fleetwood away in the league. I know we've played them in some cups a couple of times, but they're Tuesday nights and this and that and the other. So yeah, hopefully we should sell that out quite easily.
Yeah, but those last few will go eventually. It's just a case of, I think from while we're recording today, I think they're actually on sale to general sale now, I think, possibly. So the club haven't updated. It may well be that they've sold out and they've just said nothing, but there you go. Also, tickets for the Wigan away game have gone on sale. Last update we had was a couple of days ago, and that was 2,400 sold already, because they've just gone on general sale from the start, because we've got 4,000 tickets for that one. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be another huge following for the Blues for that game over Christmas. Just a shame it's on a Friday night, isn't it, really? Just a bit of a killer, that one. And finally, United have been drawn against Penrith in the Fred Conway Cumberland Cup next round. I think it's the quarterfinals this stage. So that's a nice little game for those two clubs. Right, we've put it off, Mike. Let's get into it. Oh, Reading 5, Carlisle United 1. It just felt miserable after this one, didn't it? And I know a lot of people went down midweek for a hell of a long journey to make, first trip to Reading's new ground for a lot of our fans. And I say Reading's new ground, it's nearly 20 years old now, isn't it, I think? And yeah, there was just that, I think at half time, a bit of a sinking feeling of like, we're going to struggle to get back into this one just because the options weren't there off the bench. And as you said, maybe a little bit of an eye-opener for the Piatics in terms of what work needs to be done in January.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of the players that, well, I'm not going to say didn't get on, but maybe didn't come on sooner. I think if you're not coming on sooner in a game like that, when it's not going our way, it doesn't look good for you.
No, it's. I'd be a little bit concerned if I'm not, getting the game time I'd expect from that. I mean, you're struggling to get in the game, and Dan Butterworth's not coming on to the 72nd minute for an instance. And you saying that it's not great, and
especially as well, Jack Robinson, who by all accounts had a good game. If Simo sort of shoehorning a second left back onto the pitch and playing him higher up, rather than start an Edmondson in his position up front, again, it doesn't look good, does it?
No, that'd be a concern for me if I was Edmondson. So we'll talk about him in a little minute, because I think he actually played fairly well when he came on in this game.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about the lineup. Robinson, were you surprised to see him starting? Obviously, he was one of two changes who came in. He came in for Corey Whelan, who had a pretty decent game against Charlton at centre back. In place of him, and Joe Garner came in place of Luke Plange after his suspension was completed. Were you a little bit surprised with Robinson's inclusion?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's his first start in the league for us.
This season, definitely. I think he started a couple last season, possibly, if I remember rightly.
I'm not sure.
Sutton away,
Armour seemed to start most last season.
I think Sutton away, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Sutton away, I think you're right, yeah.
I'll double check that while we're talking, but yeah. Yeah, but you're quite surprised with that one then.
Yeah, definitely. But and by all accounts, he had a decent game, and maybe put his case forward because Jack Armour hasn't been at the heights that we know he can be in some games. So it's nice to know that we have an option that can fill in.
Just check there, and yeah, it's his first league start this season. He did start one last season, which was the Sutton game. So there you go. It's a difficult one for Jack, isn't it? You know, it's weird because he's pretty much the same age as Jack Armour, but he's obviously not got the same level of experience that Jack has. You know, Jack's got 3 full seasons to play football with us. You know, so it's a bit more of a challenge for him to sort of force his way in. But yeah, he's got to take these chances, and he's going to have a big chance in the next game because, as we'll get on to later, Jack Armour's suspended now because he got his 5th booking of the season in the last game that the bookings count annoyingly. But yeah, so. It's a frustrating on that one, but interesting to see how he gets on. The game itself, early on, I thought it was quite a tight game, and actually, you know, we causing a few problems for them on the break, and either side, it was a bit more like a basketball match, wasn't it? For those opening 20 minutes or so, both sides having a good go at each other. Then Joe Garner gets an injury. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute because it was a bit of a blow, but that took a little bit of the wind out of our sails. Luke Plange comes on, doesn't quite get into the flow of the game straight away. And then up the other end, it's a sloppy goal to concede the first one, isn't it? It's a Sam Lavelle own goal. Dorset does fairly well for Reading on the left. Manages to dig out a cross. There's no one in the 6-yard box at all, and Holy's coming to claim it. And Lavelle sticks a leg out, and if you're going to do that, you've got to make sure you're putting it behind. And he puts it into the back of the net. And I've seen a few people criticise Holy for this one. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I personally don't think he's at fault for this goal.
No, I mean, people have said Holy should have shouted and said it was his. It all happened way too quickly to do that. And, you know, I think he thought if Lavelle was going to get there, I don't think he thought he was going to knock it into the back of his net. Because it wasn't a particularly whipped cross.
No. Just hard and low, wasn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, some people would say, you know, it's lucky, it's unlucky, whatever, but this is what we need to do. We need to get the ball into those areas and put it into that danger zone. And them things happen for you. You know, you make your own luck with things like that.
No, absolutely. We don't do that often enough, to be honest. And yeah, that was a real frustrating one. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think Holy's at fault at all for the goal. I feel like for me, Lavelle maybe needs to just be a little bit more aware of his surroundings on that one and what's around him. A quick look behind would show that there's no one really there, and Holy's in a good position to claim it. But it is a sort of blink of the eye at the moment thing, isn't it? He's got to make that split-second decision. And as it is, he did make the right one. Quick response, though. Up the other end. Nice little passing move. Ball comes to Jack Robinson on the left. It does take a slight nick off a defender. Not a huge amount of a flick, but enough. Falls nicely for Plange. It's actually quite a good finish to poke it past the keeper and make it 1-1, isn't it? And you think at that point, right, back in the game now. Let's keep it tight. Let's try and get something from this, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, at the time, some people on Twitter were saying, I proved everybody wrong about Luke Plange. I've always said he was good. I've always said people need to stop giving him a hard time. And then 3 minutes later...
God, yeah. So, yeah, it's a good finish from Plange. You're giving some credit, you know, for getting his foot there before the keeper. And then, this was just infuriating, this goal, because we've got the ball on the ball's on the left. And there, lad, I'm not sure he does handball. I've watched this again and again, and I can't really tell, if I'm honest. I don't know what you think about it if you've watched it back on the highlights. It's hard to tell if he does handball it, but Plange is very insistent that he handballs it. But he stops. He stops and indicates to the ref, like, handball, handball. And the lad's like, thank you very much, I'm going to keep going. Runs away from him, gets away down the wing, and at this point, Armour is very much exposed. I think Robinson was possibly out of position as well because he's gone forward and Plange hasn't tracked. So Armour gets done fairly easily on the right. Not his fault because, like I said, he was exposed. I think it was 2v1. The lad gets into the box, hits a low ball across, and Lavelle just gets caught in two minds about what to do with it. I think possibly panicking he doesn't want to score another own goal. Tries to control it, and he just sets it on a plate for Harvey Nibbs to do his best to try and miss it, but just about get it over the line from a few yards out, doesn't he?
Yeah, it was just a pinball goal, wasn't it? Just shocking goal to concede, and really poor from Plange, just not playing to the whistle. It's elementary, isn't it? You learn that as a 7-year-old, play to the whistle, and
you can appeal and still run after the play at the same time. That is possible to do. At the very least, make it difficult for him. It was far too easy for the lad to get away. That's the thing that was infuriating about that, wasn't it? It was just really, really basic stuff. So that's 2-1, and then, I mean, effectively game over about 7 minutes later, wasn't it, when Nibbs got his second goal of the game? Another really scrappy one, this time Josh Emmanuel. Just kick it out. I'm not sure what he's trying to do. He's trying to keep the ball in a dangerous area. Just boot the ball out, get back into shape and rework. You know, we were under a little bit of pressure at that point. They nick the ball back. It just pinballs about a bit. Nibbs is able to turn a little bit too easily on the edge of the box, get the ball out of his feet and hit a low shot that looks like he takes a big deflection to go past Holy, doesn't it? Because Holy dives the wrong way for it, and you can see how frustrated he is. It goes into the opposite corner. And at that point, did you ever think there's any chance to get back into the game?
No, to be honest. And as well, you know, like I said before, looking at the options we had on the bench, there wasn't a lot. But for me, with the Garner injury and bringing Plange on, I know obviously Plange scored, but they must do a lot of work in training. Simo says it all the time about first contact, second contact, stuff like that. Plange is not the same type of striker as Garner. All that work you've done before the game, focusing on Garner starting and first contact, second contact, that's gone completely out the window when you take him off for Luke Plange. If you were to bring Edmondson on, maybe some of that's still relevant. But for Plange, it's a completely different... Your entire game plan's gone out the window.
Plange is very much a get the ball into my feet. He's a tidy player with his balls at his feet, and he's got players around him. He can link play fairly well, but he's not really going to win much in the air. You know, Edmondson can win a lot more in the air than he can. And, you know, if we're going to be direct in these games, for me, I'd agree. I think Edmondson's a better option there, but obviously at the moment, Simo's just not convinced by him for whatever reason. And going into the break at half time, it was 3-1 down, and I think he had to make a change at that point, Simo, didn't he, just to try and get a bit of life into the attack. And McGeoch was the one who was sacrificed, and McGeoch was actually playing okay, to be honest, but it's one of those ones, I think, in a two-man midfield, I don't think you're going to get as much out of him as you would physically from Moxon and Mellish in that situation, as we went to a 4-4-2 with Plange and Edmondson up front. And actually, the opening 20 minutes or so of that second half, we dominated. And we caused them a lot of problems, and we had chances. And the best of the lot was for Edmondson, and he was really unlucky with this one, wasn't he? It's a corner from the from the left from Moxon in swinging. And Edmondson gets a great contact on it, past the keeper. Just luck would have it. The lad basically took a step away from the post and blocked it on the line, didn't he? If he'd stayed on the post, it's a goal probably, isn't it? And that's just sod's law when things are not going for you.
Well, there was another chance in the first half that you didn't mention, which was when the ball kind of got under Plange a bit, and Gibson was at the far post and in acres of space. And I think Plange had 2 stabs at it when Gibson was just wide open. And we've said all along, if you don't take your chances, you're not going to score. You know, we can't claim that we deserved anything from the game if you don't take your chances.
So yeah, Gibson actually had a chance on the follow-up from Edmonton to head off the line, which was blocked by the same player. And then Plange had another great chance in the second half, didn't he? Where it was a lovely ball in from the left by I think it was from Edmondson and not Edmondson, sorry, from Robinson, and he just got a little bit. If you watch it back, he gets just a little bit ahead of the ball, and as a
Yeah.
result,
Oh,
when he
that's the
makes
one I'm on about. Yeah, it
so
was in
yeah,
the second half. Yeah.
and he just it's frustrating because if the ball was a little bit more ahead of him, I think he scores that. I think he side footed it in first time, but he got a little bit ahead of the ball. He controlled it, and the ball was behind him, and he had to wait, turn on it, and by that point, the keeper had done really well to come out and block him. And like you said, maybe he's got a square to Gibson, but at the same time, it happened so quickly. I don't think he really has time to think about it in that sense. And then we just couldn't really quite get into the game at that point. I think Butterworth coming on didn't really do much good for us. Robinson dropped a left back at the point. He'd been causing problems as a left winger, really. And then Reading get their fourth. And this is probably the only one we can't really criticise. The team. Maybe Wings got a little bit too much space on the edge of the box, but it's a lovely strike, isn't it, to put it past Holy, the curling shot from 20 yards.
Yeah, although, I don't know. Maybe Holy could have done better. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. He might have been a little bit unsighted with the shot, I think, possibly by the time they were closing them down. But yeah, it was well struck shot from the edge of the box. But then the fifth goal's just it's another sloppy one, isn't it? Really on the counter for Reading. Lavelle again, just not really paying attention, and if he steps up, the lad's about 3 or 4 yards offside, and the flag goes up, but he just wasn't really watching. He gets away, he threw on goal. There was only one thing that happened once he was through on goal, and it was 5-1. And the final result, it's a weird one, Mike, because it's a game to forget. And scoreline-wise, we got battered. But if you look at the bare stat, and I know there's only one stat that matters, that's the final result. We always say that. But we matched them shots-wise. Possession-wise, not a huge amount of difference. We had more corners than them. But the difference is they took their chances when we gifted them to them. And we had to work harder for ours, and we didn't really take them when we got them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's the story of our season. It really is. But if you defend that poorly against a Reading and they score 5 on you, God knows what happens if you play that poorly against a Blackpool or a Portsmouth or a Peterborough,
Yeah. I mean, do you think there's an element of they had to work so hard against a decent Charlton side that there's slightly tired legs there for a midweek game? I know we don't like to use it as an excuse, but it kind of feels like one game too many is the wrong phrase, but it was not an ideal trip to have to do in midweek after such a testing game at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely does come into it. I mean, Emmanuel, for example, that Charlton game was his first game in a good while, and Simo only wanted to give him 60, but he said he was all right to play 70. But I bet he'll have been stiff on Sunday and Monday.
Oh, in an
probably
ideal world,
still on Tuesday.
In an ideal world, you'd want to bring Jack Ellis in for that game, wouldn't you? Maybe to mix things up a little bit to rest Emmanuel. But obviously, at the moment, Ellis is still working his way back to fitness, so you couldn't. Like I said, in that sense, it's a battering scoreline-wise, but performance-wise, I don't think it was that much of a battering. I don't think Reading were an exceptional side. I don't think they particularly tore us apart. I think we've gifted them a couple of goals on the counter on a couple of occasions, and it's flattered thing for them a little bit. The fact that they got beat by Eastleigh in the FA Cup is quite telling, isn't it? Really, shows that just how poor we were in that game. And how we really gifted the opportunities to them.
What's crazy for me, though, is like last season, we got the club record of clean sheets in a season. And this season, we cannot get a clean sheet for love nor money. Like, you'd think that, all right, you're not going to get as many as last season, but you'd think maybe you'd be able to keep a few. Yeah, but we just can't keep any.
We talk about how great Lavelle's been this season. It has been good. But are we missing Feeney? Are we missing Huntington at the back there? A bit of sort of stability in that back three that we had last season. Is that something where we were lacking slightly? Because we are being, again, like I keep saying, we're not conceding dozens and dozens of goals, and with the exception of that Reading game, we're just losing a lot of games 1-0, and we just can't quite find those tight results, can we?
Yeah, well, I think we miss Callum Guy a lot.
Oh yeah,
we
recently
really do. Because Callum Guy would have stopped quite a lot of them Reading attacks before they even got into the final third.
And McGee's finding his feet still, isn't he, after his injury issues? So
yeah, but even then, they're different kind of players, really.
Yeah.
And we don't really have anyone that can do the Callum Guy job, to be honest.
Yeah. Garner's injury was a bit frustrating, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Completely innocuous. Because he got a foul given against him for it, but all that happened was he was running behind the Reading lad, and the Reading lad's foot comes back quite far, catches Garner on the knee, he gets a gash on his knee, and he just isn't able to continue with it. It's one of those ones where, you think, oh, it's only a cut, but actually if it's quite a deep gash, it's really sore, and there's no point in him trying to carry on, is there, at that point? And frustrating one. We'll have to wait and see whether he's available, because like I said, I think again, if he's fit, he's up against a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old. I think they had at centre back. They had a couple of young lads there.
He would have absolutely loved that.
He would have enjoyed it, wouldn't he? And then you could bring Plange and Edmondson on later on when they're a bit tired, having had a battle with Joe. But as it was, we weren't able to do that. Edmondson, then let's talk about him. I think he did pretty well off the bench in this game. I think he made a difference. I think he gave us a bit of running, a bit of a physical presence up there. Has he done enough to feature against Blackpool from the start, potentially?
Well, is the question, has he done enough? Or is the question, have our other strikers done enough? And for me, no, they haven't. So, yeah, why not Ryan Edmondson? I mean, the minimum we expect as fans is effort. And frankly, Luke Plange does not provide you with that. Ryan Edmondson does. And, simple as. So for me, he can't do any worse. So, yeah, give him a go.
I kind of wish that header had gone in, because I think even if we still lost the game, I think it would have been really good for his confidence. He really needs a goal to try and get himself going this season. Not even getting goals in the Trophy Cup games is really frustrating. So hopefully something will come for him soon, because there's a few rumours sort of swirling around that he's going to be one of the first to leave in January, which I think would be such a shame if he did, because we saw how much potential he had in some of those games last season, and he just hasn't lived up to it this time round. And this could be a big few weeks for him, couldn't it? And a few other players, a chance to show what he's capable of.
Yeah, definitely. But it's funny, really, because it hasn't been suggested that maybe a spell out on loan would do him good. Because
he's out of contract in the season, isn't he? That's the thing.
No, I know he's out of contract at the end of the season. I don't know if there's an option in there or something, but we know that he can be a good player. He's won promotion from League Two twice in 2 years, and you forget how young he is as well. He is only 22, same age as Taylor Charters, I think.
Yeah, he's a young lad, so yeah, there's still plenty of time for him to show what he's capable of. We sort of already touched on Luke Plange and how frustrating he is at times. There's clearly levels of quality there, but just, I don't know if it's even lack of effort. I think it's sometimes just not a bit of belief in himself and a bit of...
From what I've heard, Plange in training is incredible, and he scores goals from all over the place. But in a match, he just can't do it. And
some players can't.
Yeah, some players can't, and you need to... Simo maybe just needs to accept that. Look, maybe that's a job for another manager, but we can't afford to be doing this experiment when we're in the relegation zone.
I mean, I think he's going back at the start of January. I can't see him staying. I just can't.
Surely.
We're going to have plenty of options in terms of better quality players to bring in, hopefully, at that point.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Sam Lavelle had a bit of a stinker, but I think we can let him off, really, because he's been very good this season, and, players are going to do that every now and then. That's just an accepted at this level. John Mellish in midfield, got a bit of criticism, I think, from a few people in this one. To be honest, I thought he was one of our better players first half in terms of pressing. I think he actually offered something a little bit. I think once the sub happened and he didn't have Garner to back him up in terms of that, it was a little bit difficult for him, but he still kept going. And I don't think he was the reason we lost this game in any way, shape or form. I still think I'd prefer to see him at centre-back, 100%. I think he just offers a little bit more there to us. Barkley didn't have the greatest game in this one either, to be fair, so... Yeah, interesting one. We've got a couple of 6-second reviews. First of all, Chris Martin, one of our regulars, he was at the game and this is what he had to say.
Rubbish game, rubbish result, rubbish stadium. Whatever the Americans do with Brunton Park, I hope it never becomes like the Select Car Leasing Stadium in Reading. Awful. Tonight's performance reminded me of a Keith Millen team. Like when we played against Northampton, it was just so disjointed and nobody had a clue what they were doing. Plus, if we're going to play 4-3-3, I'll tell you who we do miss. Amari Patrick, especially in a 4-3-3. I don't get excited for set pieces anymore, corners especially. No Morgan Feeney. And we looked completely lost and out of ideas on the counter-attack. Dennis. Fair enough, these players did not want to come back to us with the promotion, but we didn't even get anything close to replacements. And I think the summer transfer window's come back to bite us. Worst of all of that, altogether, they ran out of hot drinks at half-time. Awful. But you can't appreciate the amazing Bolton wins and Wembley wins if you don't have turgid performances like that. Anyway, on to Blackpool.
It's a fair point, though, isn't it? You've got to have the lows to make the highs that little bit more special, don't you? So,
Definitely.
So some really good points in there. In terms of the stadium, I've been before as well. It's the problem is it's the arse end of nowhere. It's miles out of town. I think there's a train station nearby now. There wasn't when I went. But yeah, there's not much around there. There's no real pubs or anything. Even by the standards of some of these out of town stadiums you get now, it's pretty bad. Reading, yeah, not one to want to return to. I think for a lot of those fans who went down for the game in midweek. The point on the players who've left in the set pieces thing I find quite interesting. So I think we're kind of in agreement. There's a level of frustration in the fact that Patrick has left the club in the summer because he wanted to play as a winger and he probably would have been playing every week as a winger for us in League One right now. But he's also not getting games for Sutton United, though. He's not starting games for them, and they're near the bottom of the league. And I think of it as much as anything, it was a level of wanting to play as a winger every week, but also wanting to be a little bit nearer back to home because he's been away from the south for pretty much all of his career. So I think there's an element of that as well. So you've got to remember that.
I think people see the lack of pace in the team and instantly think back to Patrick. But I think what we need is pace. I don't think what we need is Amari Patrick. I think what we need is just pace.
I think he'd be a better option than Dan Butterworth, for example. A lot better option, in my opinion. I think he would offer us something. I watch it. For some reason, I was watching the highlights from the Crawley game last season, the away one. We won 5-2. And he was phenomenal in that game. You could see just how much he was enjoying bombing forward. I think he was playing with Garner up front that day.
But even when Patrick wasn't doing a lot, he was forcing defences to sit deep and invite pressure from the rest of the team. And we don't have anyone to do that. So teams are playing high up, and we just can't get in behind them.
We need a winger in January. We need a winger to come in. We really do. The Dennis one's interesting. I think maybe we are lacking another striker like him. I think he would have probably chipped him with 3 or 4 goals at least. I know he hasn't scored many for Tranmere, but the momentum he had with us in terms of his last season, I think he would have done okay for us. But he's gone at the end of the day, and same with Feeney. And I agree, set pieces wise, he's maybe not having him there. His physicality and the way he would just basically barge players out of the way has made a difference. That said, what I would say is last season, Ryan Edmondson caused a lot of problems on set pieces as well with his physical presence in terms of getting about and not having him on the pitch for some of these ones. What is Plange offering us on these set pieces? Nothing really at the moment. That's another reason for me to be in the Edmondson in camp rather than the Plange in camp, really, in terms of the team. So,
but it's funny because he mentioned Dennis and he mentioned Feeney from set pieces, but we missed Dennis from set pieces.
100%.
Dennis was very clever in that 6-yard box, getting in front of the keeper so that he couldn't stop a cross.
Yeah. He's a prime example that size is not necessarily the solution for set pieces. He was maybe 5'11", something like that, 6 foot max, and he would cause all kinds of problems. Near post as well, the flick-ons he could get, he was excellent at that, wasn't he? So yeah, absolutely. But we can't hark back to the past for too long. January's coming soon, and the level of player we're going to be bringing in is hopefully going to take us up another notch. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Right, we've got one more 6-second review. It's from Dan. I don't think it's 60 seconds long. Let's hear what he has to say.
You know when you get dog on the bottom of new trainers and you just can't get it off while you're walking about? Yeah, that was that match.
So yeah, and that's Dan's review of the Reading game. And yeah, I think that's quite a good one to end on, really, for the Reading review, isn't it? Let's do a little rundown of the League One results from those midweek set of fixtures. Barnsley 1, Wickham 0. We'll talk about that in the X-Blues section, because that's an interesting one, that one. Our opponents this weekend, Blackpool lost 2-1 at home against Northampton. A bit of a surprise result, that one. Bristol Rovers 1-1 draw with Leyton Orient. Burton lost 2-0 at home to Portsmouth. Cambridge United lost 3-0 at home to Lincoln City, a result that cost Mark Bonner his job as manager, I think, didn't it? So, and they've just appointed Neil Harris as his replacement. That's an interesting appointment. Harris has done okay generally at the managerial job he has, hasn't he? So, I think it's not the worst appointment in the world. They could have made that, to be fair. Charlton got a 2-1 win over Cheltenham at home. Exeter 0, Shrewsbury 0, Oxford 0, Bolton 0. Thrillers, those two, I'm sure. Port Vale 0, Derby 1. Derby just starting to string a few results together now, aren't they? Stevenage 2, Peterborough 2. Stevenage is still right up there. Very remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely they're going to drop off at some point. I know they did really well last season.
I said this time last season with them, though, and,
never came.
Yeah.
Never came. And finally, Wigan 3, Fleetwood 0. Fleetwood, thankfully, still struggling down at the bottom with us. So hopefully that Boxing Day result might be one where we can overhaul them at that point. But I think we've covered pretty much the Reading game now, Mike. Nothing else we want to talk about there, is there?
No.
Thank God for that, right. We'll be taking a short break. When we come back from the break, we're going to go straight into the Behind Enemy Lines section where I'll be speaking to John from the Seasiders Podcast. And we talked about, it was hard not to talk about the Oyston era and how important it was to end that. And he had a long answer on that one, to be fair. It's good. It's really in-depth and explains why it was so important for them to get rid of the Oyston family as owners. A little bit on the return of Neil Critchley as their manager, and there was a little bit of a love in for Paul Simpson as well, because they're big fans of him down there on the Files Coast as well. So, we're back in just a sec, and we'll be talking to John.
Hi, I'm Thomas Holy, and you are listening to Brunton Bugle.
Okay, we're back after the break now, and it's time for Behind Enemy Lines. And this week we are speaking to John from the Seasiders Podcast. He's going to tell us about all things Blackpool FC. John, good to have you on the show.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Right, I sort of pre-warned you before we started recording here what I was going to ask you first question. You said this one might take a while to answer, so we'll try and keep it as brief as we can, but it is one that I think we kind of need to cover. So anyone who's sort of vaguely followed what happened with Blackpool over recent years will know that 4 years ago, the 32 years of, I think, turmoil, it's fair to say, under the ownership of the Oyston family finally came to an end when Simon Sadler bought a majority stake in the club. How much of a relief was it to finally see the back of them? Because a fan maybe who hasn't followed it as closely might go, well, hang on, they got you into the Premier League. Why aren't you grateful for that? They've built this brand new stadium. But it's a lot more complex than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. As I said, how long have you got? So the club had massive amounts of chronic underinvestment throughout the years. You mentioned a new stadium that they, air quotes, financed. That the majority of that was financed via a trust. I think it was called the Football Foundation at the time. So the vast majority of that was financed through grants. So that was the stadium. We had just years and years of chronic underinvestment. I think we had one season where the owners did actually invest into the club and we nearly got to the promised land of the Championship. But yeah, long story short, the reasons why the boycotts happened and had to happen was the post-Premier League years, because there was no legacy whatsoever from the Premier League money. It's quite well documented that the Oystons, how can we put it, they moved funds from the football club into various shell companies that they set up. The Premier League success was primarily down to an outside investor called Valeri Belakon, who was a Latvian investor. Not a lot of people know this. People say the Oystons got the Blackpool to the Premier League. Well, they didn't really. It was due to a fighting fund set up by Valeri Belakon, who was, like we say, was a Latvian banker. Now, he bought I think it was a 25% share in the club. And part of that deal was he bought I think it was about $1 million, might have been a bit less than $1 million, $500,000, a fighting fund that bought us Charlie Adam, Neil Eardley, and a few other key players. David Vaughan was another. These weren't by any stretch of the imagination, £1 million signings. They were a bit more than what we were used to seeing on transfer fees. But Ian Holloway gelled this team. They were misfits really from other clubs, rejected from other clubs. Charlie was rejected from Rangers. David Vaughan we bought from it was Real Sociedad. He didn't do much over there. From Crewe, Neil Early from Oldham. I think he was a promising player there, and a few others. And they gelled together, and it was kind of the perfect storm. And that was got into the Premier League, and we all thought the club will be, transformed from top to bottom. We've had the same training league, training ground that Stanley Matthews trained on. It was literally a wooden hut. The managers had to buy their own washing machines and fridges, things like that for the changing rooms. And we never took players to the training ground because we probably wouldn't get the deals over the line, that kind of thing. So everyone presumed it'd be a big investment in the infrastructure of the club and putting it on a sound footing. We didn't expect it just to stay in the Premier League. A lot of people would have been happy with what a lot of Blackpool fans regard as our natural level, just Championship, maybe just dallying with promotion every now and then. If we slip down to League One, Third Division, as it was then, so be it. But we just wanted to see investment in the club in the form of training ground. We wanted the stadium finishing. We've still got a temporary stand there that they built. The pitch was an absolute disgrace. We didn't have a groundsman. I think it was actually a milkman who was the head groundsman.
Oh my God!
And the only lasting legacy of the Premier League money was pitch sprinklers, and that was literally it. There was nothing invested whatsoever. So I know I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. So obviously Blackpool fans weren't happy with this money disappearing. They weren't happy with the transfer dealings after the Premier League. We were getting all these parachute payments that wasn't getting spent on no investment whatsoever in players. We were just getting free transfers, and people were talking up against them and what they were doing on message boards. And so the Oystons took it upon themselves to go and find things people had been saying online and sue them, threaten them with litigation. That wasn't just one person, it was multiple people. So imagine a football club suing its own fans.
Not a great look, is it?
Yeah, no. For, tens of thousands of pounds, 20,000, like that, ruining people's lives. So it was a terrible time to be a Blackpool fan, really. So the only way we could envisage getting rid of them was just to starve the club of money and funds and hope they try and force them out, because that was literally the only thing we could do. We didn't get any help from the FL. Football authorities didn't want to know. So we started a campaign called Not a Penny More, where we'd continue to support the team in any way we could, but that couldn't be at home games, not while they were suing their own fans and trying to silence their own fans. Yeah. It was just it's an unbelievable thing to go through at the clubs. There was mass protests all the time. So people didn't go to the home games. We went to away games, boycotted all the merchandise. We went, I think there was a couple of protest groups that went out of the way to try and inform all the local community about what they were doing to the club, etc., and what they were doing to people. But what eventually forced them out of the club was a class action. Not a class action, it was an action through the courts that Valeri Bellicon took, which was to basically take action against them for the fact that I think he was a 25% shareholder. Might have been 25, 30%, I don't know exactly. But he was basically due a third of the Premier League windfall. And he was of the opinion, he was a board member, well, he was a director. Now, he wanted that money reinvested in the club, in the players, in the ground, so he wasn't really bothered about making money for himself. He was so happy that we got to where we'd got to, and he just wanted to improve the club. Now, they completely ignored everything that he wanted. They cut him out of all the board meetings, and he was basically due, like I said, 25, 30% of the proceeds, and he didn't get a penny. So he instructed one of London's absolute top corporate law firms to go after them, which he did successfully to the tune of, it was around £33 million judgment against them. Yeah. So that forced the sale of the club. So they didn't have I don't believe they had the assets or the money to pay that. So there was a forced sale of the club. The receivers came in, and we were like, well, wow, what happens now? Because the club was more or less in receivership, and luckily they found a local businessman. I'll say he's local. He was a Hong Kong. He is a Hong Kong hedge fund manager. Got quite deep pockets. Blackpool fan, born and raised, and he took the opportunity to buy the club. And yeah, we're in good hands. The club's in good hands now. We're being run for the right reasons. People don't care that, obviously we care that we got relegated, but we've got our club back, and now we've been, the fans, we've been four years in the wilderness of not being able to go and support your team. Me and all my friends, we're lifelong season ticket holders, and it was a painful part of our history, and just thankfully we're through the other side now, and back in the third division where it all began.
It must have been even more frustrating when you say those things about no investment in the training ground and the ground or whatever and stuff like that. When you looked 6 miles up the coast at Fleetwood, a much smaller club, having a huge amount put into there. And I know what's happened there now is a bit funny, but actually seeing some money getting pumped into their club, that must have been like a bit galling at times, because they are a much smaller club than you at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, they're a glorified pub team, really, aren't they? They were. When the Premier League, I think we were 10 divisions apart, something like that. So yeah, they've got a fantastic training facility. It's called Poolfoot Farm, opened by Alex Ferguson. They've got I think it's a Cat 2 academy there. They've got a dome where you can play, multiple artificial pitches. All the community use it, so it's a great facility there. They were kind of on the up. There was AFC Fylde as well. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah,
they were owned by they are owned by a Blackpool fan called David Haythornthwaite, and he tried to buy the club about, must be 15, 20 years ago now, and he kind of got ridiculed by the Oystons, so he had a real revenge mission, and I think that was his one of his main reasons for building up AFC Fylde. His aim was to show the Oystons how to run a football club, and they've got a brand new training ground now, which is really good. They've got a decentish stadium for that level. So there was 2 clubs on the Foul Coast, all on the way up at the time, and we were languishing without a team support really. So yeah, it was quite depressing time actually. I actually went to an AFC Fylde game just to see what it was like, and it was like, I didn't care. I was like, I was not into it, and I thought I'm never coming here again. It's Blackpool or nothing.
Exactly. Well, let's get to present day now then. Let's talk about your manager, Neil Critchley. Interesting one, because he sort of left under maybe a little bit of a cloud, is it fair to say, when he left a couple of years ago? So back as manager this summer, was he well accepted, and how's it gone so far for him?
I wouldn't say he was well accepted. It was he did leave just completely out of the blue.
To be an assistant as well.
To be an assistant. I think no one would have batted an eyelid really had he gone to a bigger championship club, like Sunderland, Middlesbrough, to be manager, or to be manager of a Premier League team, lower Premier. But to go as an assistant was it was a bit galling really. And the fact that he didn't say anything, there was no press release, and thanks for the support and what have you. There was nothing. He just disappeared and left. So that left a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth. And when he was re-announced, a lot of the fan base, myself included, and a few of my pals, we all wanted Stephen Dobbie to be the manager. He's been a great player for the club, and he came in as caretaker manager, did a fantastic job. So we had to endure hoofball from Mick McCarthy towards the back end of the season. That was drudgery, to say the least. And Dobbie coming in, he was an attacking player and a flair player in his time, scored a lot of goals. He just went out and attacked teams, and we won 50% of the games under him. So a lot of people wanted him to be given a crack at the manager's job. Wasn't to be. The recruitment process apparently said Neil Critchley is the man for the job. Right? He knows the squad quite well from last time.
Yeah.
So people were, taking the emotion out of it, I was quite pleased that we'd got him back. He's a very good coach. He did very well at this level. Last time we played in the League One, he got us promoted and did a really good job in the Championship. So on that basis, he's done really well. We've had a very slow start under him this season. We've started to get a bit of steam, and that was quickly derailed by losing at home to Northampton. So I think he's still got a few bridges to rebuild with the fan base, and I think they won't be as forgiving as they were first time round should results dip and we took a fall down the table. So yeah, we'll see.
What are your expectations for this season then? Obviously, with having been relegated last season and Neil coming back into the club, I mean, looking at your recruitment, it seems pretty decent. I think pretty much all of us on our season preview pod had you guys in or around the playoffs roundabout for this season, because it is quite a tough division. I think there's quite a lot of well-balanced teams at the top, but I think you guys, looking generally at it, with the likes of Rhodes coming in particularly, we felt that you'd be right up there.
Yeah, squad-wise, I think I probably speak for the majority of the fans. We're all pretty happy with the squad that's been put together. We were a bit unfortunate losing Jerry Yates in the summer. He was a key player, but we had
Jerry on loan a few years back. He's a very good player.
You did, didn't you? Of course, yeah. But we got Carl Joseph in return from Swansea, and of course he got injured as soon as he joined. So
that's law, isn't it?
I think he was probably a like-for-like replacement for Jerry, which led us to Jordan Rose. I think Jordan Rose was an accidental sign, not an accidental. It was a necessity signing.
Yeah,
because Joseph was injured. So they said these things happen for a reason, don't they? So we've signed Jordan Rose to cover for him, and he's been absolutely banging them in. As for what I thought we'd be finishing in the playoffs. I didn't think we'd go up automatically, because it's not what Blackpool do. Not in I think in my entire lifetime, we've been promoted 7 times, and 6 of those have been through the playoffs. I've never. I think it was probably at 8 when we went up last time, so I can't really remember any of it. So we are the playoff kings, and I was expecting us to get to the playoffs. Maybe knock on the door of the automatic spots, but I don't think League One is as competitive as it has been in years gone by, to be honest. I think when we went up, the season after we went up last year, it was some very good teams down there. So I'm glad we weren't in it last year compared to this year.
Yeah. Danger men in the squad other than Rhodes, who should we be looking out for?
Carl Joseph, just mentioned him. Just come back from injury. He looks a decent player. He's fast. He's aggressive. He's quick. He looks like he's got goals in him, but he's just getting to full fitness. So possibly him if he does start. We've got a player called CJ Hamilton. He's got pace to burn. He's actually a left winger, but we've been playing him in inverted wing back, so he's on the right. He can drop a shoulder and go past pretty much any player in the division. I'd say he's probably the quickest player in the division. So he's one to look out for. I think he's a top assist. Is he top assists in League One?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's one to look for. We've got a player called Owen Dale who's on loan at Portsmouth last season. He's coming into a bit of form at the moment, so he's another one to watch. Shane Lavery, Northern Ireland, he's out injured. Northern Ireland International, he's decent. And finally, Karamoko Dembele, who we've signed from Brest on loan, wonder kid from Chelsea.
Wow,
he can be an absolute match winner. He's one of those players where you don't know what he's going to do next. Neither do.
We've got a few of those.
Yeah. So he's a real live wire in the midfield. Plays in a number 10 role occasionally, and he can really pick a pass and unlock teams and do some damage. So probably say those 3.
Connections between the 2 squads. I look for your squad. There's no one in there at the moment who used to play for us, I don't think. I think the news you get is Gary Medina's obviously training with you guys again at the moment. He's been linked with both of our clubs, I think, hasn't he, over the last few months in terms of where he'll go in January when he's fully fit. Interesting to see where he turns up. He's one of those ones, Gary, isn't he? He's a very effective player if you can keep him out of trouble. And that's where the problem lies. Looking at the Carlisle squad, there's a couple in there. Callum Guy, unfortunately, won't be playing. He's out for 9 months with a ACL injury. And obviously, the man in the hot seat at Brunton Park was a particularly popular player at Blackpool. Paul Simpson, wasn't he? You mentioned playoff results. Didn't he score at the Millennium Stadium in the final?
Yep,
was that?
He certainly did.
Yeah.
Yep. He scored in the match against Orient. It was 2001, I think. 1, yeah, 2001. it was 2-2, and the ball got played out from midfield to Simo out on the left, and he had to come in an angle, and all the Blackpool end anyway, we all gasped there in and held our breath. But as soon as I saw it was Paul Simpson coming in from the left with the ball at his feet, I thought, goal, absolute. He will finish this. Cool as you like, just side footed it into the far corner. That was one of my greatest moments ever as a Blackpool fan, actually.
Yeah.
Simo that season as a player, he was probably the difference between us not going up and going up. He came in and he was absolutely superb player and an old head at the time as well. And he had a great effect, great left foot as well. And he had just a brilliant effect around the rest of the team, the young lads, and he brought them on. And I really like him as a person as well. He's a decent guy. So I wouldn't have been unhappy had he been given the Blackpool job at some point.
I think he's quite happy where he is right now, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, Callum Guy, in particular, memories of him because he wasn't overly successful, you guys, but he's been a fantastic player for us over the last 3 years.
Yeah. He just reminds me of the Oyston era. I think it might have just been after. So yeah, he didn't really do a lot at Blackpool, to be honest, but he was a player from around that time when the boycott was going on or its final throw. So yeah, don't really have an opinion on him.
No, fair enough.
But it's interesting that he's doing well. Carlisle.
Yeah,
I do see his name popping up on a Soccer Saturday every now and then.
When you see his name popped up, you can guarantee it's a belter because he does not score tap-ins. I think every goal he's scored from outside the area. Ridiculous his record with that. Any memories of some past games against Carlisle that you can recall? Particularly, I mean, for me, past games against Blackpool, the one that stands out for me is probably was it 99? I think late 99 when Bloomfield Road hadn't been developed at all by that point, and there was a huge hole in the roof. We got absolutely poured down on, but our goalkeeper Peter Keane scored that day with a drop kick from his own area. That's what my main memory of Blackpool basically throughout the games.
There was a very what was it? It'll have been 1990 or 91. I think we won 6-0.
Yeah, I saw the highlights of that the other day.
Yeah, that was a time when we had a really good team at the time. Dave Bamber and David Ayres, Tony Rodwell, managed by Billy Ayre, a young Trevor Sinclair was in the squad at the time.
Wow.
And I think we were both flying high in League 3. We were both doing quite well at the time.
It was in the bottom tier, I think, and I have a feeling that it was around about a time where we had this weird season where we had a brilliant second half to one season and a brilliant start to the following season. And if you put that over a whole season, we would have won the title. But we collapsed it. Either side of that, our form was like relegation level. So that's the reason why we didn't go up in either season.
I remember thinking it was an important game, and we absolutely wiped the floor with it. But I always enjoyed my trips up to Brunton Park. I've not been for years and years and years. For one reason or other, I've just not made our last 2 trips. I think we might have been in, was it 2017 around then? I
think Brad Potts scored last time. I think you guys came up and they got a little bit of stick. I remember, yeah. Interesting on that one. I mean, just look, final question before we do predictions. Bloomfield Road, as we mentioned, has changed quite a bit down the years. What can Carlisle fans expect on the visit this weekend? Because I think we're going to be in the temporary stand. I've been in there for when we played Yeovil Town in the FA Cup a few years back, when you kindly let us use our stadium after the floods. I was in the press box in that end, and from what I remember, there's not a huge amount in there, is there, in that temporary stand?
Well, you say that, but I think it holds about four and a bit.
We're only getting 2,000 out of me because of the safety certificate issue.
That's what they say. It's a bit of a contentious issue at the moment. Some of the players and some of the fans don't really like it when we give that entire end away to away supporters. Whether it's safety certificate related or not, or maybe the club don't want to give the team an advantage. My personal opinion is that I think we should sell it out to the clubs where there's demand. I think it adds to the atmosphere. So yeah, it's a shame that you don't get the whole stand. I'm sure Carlisle would fill it, bring 4,000. I noticed you took a large following to Bolton, so I'd expect it to be the same.
We've already sold about 3,000 for Wigan as well, I think. So
Right, there you go.
It's good times for us following us, at least, anyway.
Yeah. Well, Blackpool away. Blackpool's got a bit more of a pull than Wigan and Bolton as well.
Always does. I think everyone's just a little bit gutted it's not in August, but we get to see the Illuminations while we're there, so that's a nice little treat as well. But yeah, I think we're all looking forward to it. John, you've been very kind with your time. We're going to go and speak about for your pod in a minute. Before you go, can I have a prediction for this weekend's game?
Well, we've been doing really well against the teams in the upper echelons of League One this season, and we've been struggling against the teams that have been near the bottom. I think we'll just edge it though, 2-1, on the back of a couple of good wins. 2 4-0s, but we lost at home to Northampton. We looked a bit tired, but I think we've got enough quality in the squad to rotate and just win the game. So I'll give 2-1.
Wouldn't surprise me at all if that was a result, to be fair, but there you go. John, thanks for your time and all the best for the rest of the season after this weekend's game.
Nice one. You too, mate. See ya.
Hi, it's Tom Piatic II, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, we're back for the second half of the show, the preview of the Blackpool game. Thanks once again to John from the Seasiders Podcast for taking his time to speak to us. Yeah, I mean, you think of clubs that have had terrible owners down the end, and some people might look at the Oystons, might they think, oh, but look, they got them into the Premier League, they had them, brand new stadium and stuff like that. But it's not as simple as that. The amount of money that was not reinvested back into that club from what they got in the Premier League and stuff is pretty disgraceful, wasn't it, really, the way they were treated in terms of that. And fair play, the Blackpool fans, they boycotted the club for a long period and they were getting very low crowds, and for a club that is a big club. And yeah, they've managed to turn things around now, and they seem quite content with the current owners, don't they, by the looks of things?
Yeah, well, I think they could have anyone own the club after the Oystons, and they'd be quite content with them.
Yes, absolutely. Right, let's talk about Blackpool then, Mike. In terms of them as a club, as I said there, I think sometimes people don't appreciate how big of a club they are, do they, really? Because when you look at it, we didn't play them in a fixture, competitive fixture, until 1967. And you look back, we played, a lot of other clubs in the north a lot sooner than that. Preston, you maybe think similar-ish time, because obviously they were up near the top, but Blackpool were there too. One of those Lancashire football clubs that have always been big in the very early history of football, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Stanley Matthews was there, wasn't he? I think.
Yes, Stanley Matthews, famously, obviously, and there in Stoke City. I think sometimes you kind of look at this division and you instantly pick out, your Boltons and your Portsmouths and your Derbys, whatever, and you kind of forget the fact that Blackpool are a pretty decent sized club too. Came down in the summer after Mick McCarthy failed miserably to try and keep them up. Reappointed Neil Critchley as their boss. He left under a bit of a cloud first time round, of course, didn't he? Because he went to go and be a assistant manager to Steven Gerrard at Aston Villa. Didn't work out for him there. He was sacked along with Gerrard a few months later. I think he then popped up at QPR to be their boss for a short while. And now has turned up again at Blackpool. They seem to be quite accepting of him back there. I think there's a few grumbles, but first time round he did a terrific job, didn't he, with Blackpool?
Yeah, he did. He came from Liverpool, didn't he? He was their under 23s or whatever it is, manager. And yeah, he seemed sort of like a decent championship manager.
Yeah, he seemed to sort of sort himself out. It was a bit of a bizarre one, wasn't he? When he said, I want to go and test myself against the best coaches in the world. It's like, well, you kind of accept it if he goes to a bigger championship club, but to go to be assistant at a Premier League club, it's a bizarre move. You don't see that very often. And Mick Wadsworth obviously did similar with us back in the 90s to go to Norwich, but you don't see very often a manager leaving his job as a manager to be an assistant somewhere else.
No, although I think, in days gone by, often if the manager got sacked, the assistant would be caretaker for a while and maybe get the manager's job. But nowadays, the assistant, like you say, just gets sat with the manager, so it doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In terms of their summer recruitment, Mike, I think when we all looked at it, we thought some really good solid signings in there for them, actually, wasn't there? I mean, Matthew Pennington from Shrewsbury stands out. He was one of their key players. I think Morgan Feeney was actually brought in as a replacement for him at Shrewsbury Town. they really, really rate Pennington. I think he started out at Everton, if I remember rightly. I think he was there for a while.
Yeah.
But even looking for, Aldi Morgan from Charlton's a pretty good midfielder. Carl Joseph was brought in as part of the deal that saw Jerry Yates leave to Swansea City. He's had a few injury issues, but he seems to be one there very impressive as well.
Yeah. I remember doing a pre-season preview and we weren't quite sure how he was going to fare. But yeah, he seems to have been all right despite a few injuries, like you say.
Ollie Norburn came in from Peterborough United and he's already been made captain, which probably tells you how important he is to them, I think it's fair to say. When you look down through them, Kylian Kouassi from sort of United's an unusual one. Sort of shades of Toby Show Silver even going there. It's kind of like,
did Kouassi not play really well against us though?
He did have a good game against us, and so did Toby Show Silver, didn't he? So there you go.
You say that, I'd have Toby Show Silver starting for us up front at the minute.
Tell you what, I think he'd cause more problems than some of the other players who've played up front for us this season. It's fair to say. Kind of avoiding the point here, Mike. The obvious signing that really stands out for them this summer, and one that I think I'd love to have seen signed for us, Jordan Rhodes on loan from Huddersfield Town. Brought in almost as a necessity when Joseph got his injury when he first came in, but what a terrific signing. I mean, I think everyone expected him to be a very good signing for them, didn't they?
Yeah, he's played most of his career in the Championship now, hasn't he? I mean, obviously, we played against him in League One a lot of times when he was at Huddersfield, but he was only about 19, 20 back then. And I think ever since then, he's just been playing in the Championship, and he's not a striker that always depended on pace. He's just a proper fox in the box, knows where the goal is, and you know what you're going to get from him.
I didn't realise this. I'm just looking here, right? In his career, he's gone for a combined set of transfer fees of... That's astonishing. I didn't realise it was this much. 26 million, if I'm right. No, it's more than that, yeah. 28 million. Sorry, I got this wrong again. Sorry. 27... I'm trying to count up 10, 9 and 8 here. £27 million in total is what's been paid for him in transfer fees, according to Soccerbase. It might be wrong on that. Because I knew he'd gone for big money to Blackburn from Huddersfield, but I didn't realise he'd then gone big money to Middlesbrough and then to Sheffield Wednesday as well. That's quite astonishing, isn't it? Really, when you think of it, to get a player like him on loan is pretty good, isn't it? Back from Huddersfield, 11 goals in 16 games tells you how good he is, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. He's still got it. And like I say, he's one of them strikers. Some strikers, they age a bit, they lose the pace, but it's not really an issue for him. He just knows how to score goals.
He's got a terrific header against Northampton Town in that defeat last time out. A header from pretty much the penalty spot. And the keeper had absolutely no chance. He put such power into it. He's one we really have to keep a close eye on this weekend, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Who else in their squad stands out to you?
Well, another player that they got on loan was Jensen Weir from Brighton, who's really highly rated.
Yes.
Because he was at Morecambe last season, and he scored 10 goals from midfield in a poor team, which I think is very impressive. So I think he's one of those that you put him in a better team and, see what he can do. I think he's only played about 10 games this season, but I don't know if he's been injured, but he's certainly one that I wouldn't have minded us going for, to be honest, in the summer.
Yeah. I think we've got to look at some of the better loanees in League Two this season, don't we, really, and try and poach a couple of them in January, if any luck. Maybe they'll, as Adam mentioned in one of the recent pods, the lad Mellon from Morecambe's definitely one that we should be taking a look at. I mean, tack-wise, they've got so many options on there. Owen Dale was on loan at Portsmouth last season, and he seems to be doing quite well for them. Karamoko Dembele from Brest. You don't get many players on loan from clubs like that, do you, at this level? CJ Hamilton, though, is one I know that John mentioned he was really impressed with this season. In terms of his pace, he's got electrifying pace, hasn't he? So, we're not blessed with pace in our team that much, so that might be a bit of a challenge for us, I think, facing up against him.
Definitely.
I'm not looking forward to that at all. Some other little bits in terms of obviously stats for this game. Referee for the game is Lewis Smith from Lancashire. I don't know which part of Lancashire, I'm presuming not Blackpool. It's his second season as an EFL referee. He started in 2022, taken charge of 22 games so far this season, handing out 93 yellows and 5 red cards. And last season he handed out 107 yellows and 1 red card in 34 games. The last United game we took charge of was December last year, the 1-1 draw with Sutton United, where Whelan and Guy were booked for United that day, and Ryan Edmondson scored, funny enough. So there you go. Head-to-head wise, 47th meeting between the two sides. United have won 15, 10 have been a draw, and 21 wins for the Seasiders. If you take away trophy games, Mike, our league record against Blackpool in the last 34 years is pretty appalling. Just 3 wins out of the last 14 games. 9 have been defeats and 2 draws. Our last win at Bloomfield Road in the league was in September 1986.
Oof.
It was a 2-1 victory thanks to a brace from Mally Poskett, one of Dan's favourite players. So that's how long ago that was. It's quite a stretch, isn't it? I think that season we got relegated from Division 3 to Division 4, having scored only 39 goals in 46 games. So, yeah.
I remember playing them away a few years ago now. It was on a Boxing Day. I think it was under Neil MacDonald. And that was one of the coldest games I've ever been to.
Was that a 0-0? I imagine.
No, I think Carl Hawley scored one for us. I don't know if it was a draw or we lost like 2-1 or something.
I've got the head-to-head up here. I'll double check that while you're talking. I think that one was a 2-1 defeat. You're right. Yes. Hawley. Peter Murphy scored an own goal that day.
Because that was they had like a temporary away stand that was like made of wood. It was
they've
got
a new temporary stand now, haven't they?
Yeah,
slightly different. So yeah, I'm just looking at the lineup there. God, there's some interesting players for us that day. So that's where we are in terms of head-to-head. I think we mentioned last time how they lost 2-1 against Northampton. A bit of a surprise, that one. Other recent form. They've had a couple of batterings in there, their clubs, in the last 6 games. That Northampton game was preceded by a 4-0 win at Portsmouth and a 4-0 home win over Shrewsbury. So when they're on form, they're capable of scoring goals, aren't they? That's a slight concern.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other bits you want to talk about in terms of that stuff before we do Dan's play for both, Mike. I'm not sure which else to cover.
So.
No. I was going to do a little quiz question for you there. The last time we beat Blackpool was in September 2006. It was a 2-0 victory at Brunton Park.
Carl Hawley scored in that one as well, I think.
He did. He scored an 88th minute goal. Who scored the other goal for United that day?
Was it Chris Lumsden?
It was Chris Lumsden, indeed. He scored the other goal. We were 4th in the league at that point, and Blackpool were 21st. They had a pretty good start to that season.
Because I remember that I was in the Warwick for that game, and Hawley's goal where he lobbed the keeper, it was one of them where you knew it was going in like a good 10 yards before it even hit the net.
Yeah.
It was just fantastic, yeah.
Brilliant goal it was. You're absolutely right. Right, let's do the play for both then. So there is a long list to read out in a second of these. This is probably the club with the longest list of players that play for both that I've found so far. But Dan has managed to pick one out for us. I did suggest one to him. I don't know if he's picked it. I hope he has, because it's a belter if he has. So here's Dan's play for both for Carlisle and Blackpool.
The played for both this time is a striker, and despite Lee trying to push one on me, I've gone for a different one. No, it's not Keith Walwyn. It's Andy Watson. Born in Leeds, started at the fantastically named Yorkshire Amateur, and he started his proper career at Harrogate Town. Then he moved to Halifax a year later under Billy Eyre, who was a well-known manager around those times. Scored a few goals at Halifax, and then he got a move to Swansea City, but it didn't really happen for him at Swansea. And his next move in 1991 was to come up to Carlisle, where he actually had the best scoring average of his career. I think in league games he got something like 22 in 56. And we were a terrible team, 91, 92, 92, 93. And Watson was one of the few shining lights in it. You know, he scored goals in we had some terrible players around that time. In 1993, he was then signed by this weekend's opponents, Blackpool, for it was around 50,000 from memory, but he was reunited with Billy Eyre, who he'd been with at Halifax. And apparently the money used to buy him from us was raised by a scheme that Blackpool did called Buy a Player Match, where they had a game against Rotherham, and I think just over 6,000 attended, and all the game money went to buy a player. So they bought Watson from us. He was there about 3 years, scored 40 odd goals over 100 appearances. He actually scored his first goals for Blackpool in the derby against Preston, which obviously will have endeared him to the fans. He then, Gary Megson succeeded Sam Allardyce at Blackpool, and decided Watson was, no longer needed, and he moved to Walsall for 2 or 3 years before he disappeared at Garforth Town and Doncaster around the time they were out of the league. But yeah, Andy Watson, one of the few decent players in a poor couple of years.
I did wonder if he would pick Keith Wellman when I tried to push him on him, but there you go. Well, I'm sure we'll have Big Keith as one of the ones in the near future. Maybe for the return fixture at the end of the season, I'll make Dan pick it then. But yeah, Andy Watson. Yeah, there you go. I'm pretty sure there was a period. I might have made this up, and some of our old fans will remind me because I wasn't following the Blues back then. But I'm sure there was a game where we had a player called Holmes playing for us around about that time, where we had a Holmes and Watson score for us in the same game. I'm sure that happened. So anyone, please do give us a message on Twitter and just try and point us in the right direction for that one. Right, I'm going to do the full list here. This is going to take a while, Mike, so bear with me. We'll pick a couple out maybe to talk about a bit more. Tom Aldred, he had a spell there. Nick Anderton obviously was there. That's where we signed him from, wasn't it, I think? Derek Armstrong is a local lad who only played a game, I think one game for both us and Blackpool. Jack Ashurst, who's a big cult hero from the 80s. Ian Bailey, Frank Barter, Chris Beach played there at Blackpool, as did Dennis Booth. David Brightwell, I didn't realise he was there, to be fair. Dave Burgess, Tony Kay, famously obviously went to Blackpool. That was the transfer that eventually led to Jimmy Glass joining the Blues. Tim Carter, Russell Coughlin, Andy Cousins, Mark Cullen. Jamie Devitt didn't actually play a game for them, but he was signed for them. Peter Duffield, John Durnin, Ashley Easton, Rob Edwards, Wayne Entwistle, Ricardo Gabbiadini, Paul Gerard played for them. Danny Graham, Stuart Green, Phil Gulliver, Callum Guy, Wayne Harrison, Ian Hart. I think was Ian Hart there just before he signed for us, I think. Possibly. I think he had a very short spell there, didn't he? It just didn't quite work out for him.
I think so, yeah.
If I remember rightly, yeah. Bob Hatton, Bobby Hutchinson, Rhys James, Richard Keogh, David Lee, Danny Livesey, Chris Lumsden had a loan spell there from Sunderland early on in his career. Gary Medine, Kelvin Meller, Colin Methven, famously born in India. So one of the players who actually played for us who's born in India. Neil Moore, Ian Morris, Eric Nixon, John O'Sullivan, Gordon Owen, Brad Potts, Andy Priest. I think he was quite a popular player for them, wasn't he? I think he had a decent spell there. Billy Rafferty, Paul Robinson, that's the one who was at Newcastle. Barry Siddle, Paul Simpson, as we obviously mentioned before. A player that I'm sure both sets of fans would quite happily forget, Elias Sorensen. William Varty, not Will Varty, because there's 2 Will Vartys that have played for Carlisle United. One played in the 1930s. So I don't know if they're actually related. I presume they must be, surely, because there can't be many Vartys about. William Varty in the 1930s. Keith Walwyn, as I mentioned before. Paul Warhurst. Andy Watson. Andy Welsh. Hayden White. Tom Wilcox, who famously, I think we said on this pod before, was born at sea. So that we can claim the sea as one of the places where a Carlisle United players come from as well. Jerry Yates and Francois Zoko had a spell there as well. So that is a hell of a long list, isn't it? Compared, I mean, some of the other clubs we struggle to get 4 or 5 together. So plenty to choose from then. Let's talk about United then, Mike. What do you do in terms of the? I presume we're going to stick with 4-3-3 for now. It seems the obvious option. Part of me will be tempted to go back to 3-5-2 and maybe stick Mellish on the left side and Barkley on the right, with Lavelle in the middle. Go with your wing backs and then try Garner Edmondson up front, maybe. Or if Garner's not fit, Blanchard Edmondson up there and mix it up in that sense, possibly. With your midfield three of Moxon, McGeoch and Gibson.
It's tough, isn't it? I mean, I've felt this season we've looked better with 4 at the back.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind us doing that. Obviously, Robinson will have to come in at left back. but I feel like, yeah, you might see more. Emmanuel might be better as a wing back, but sometimes we see more of Armour going forwards as a full back than as a wing back.
Yeah, but then again,
So-
most of his best performances for us have been as a wing back, haven't they? When he's been able to get forward a bit more. So I think
I don't know.
I think Robinson's going to be better suited to that role as well, possibly.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't argue with 4 at the back, and McGeoch, Moxon sort of sitting more. Might be a game for Alfie McCalmont, I think, to play midfield as well, chase things down a bit, not give him a lot of time on the ball.
Would you much rather have Mellish in defence then? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There's a few options in there potentially, isn't there? You know, we've got a few players coming, but hopefully Jack Ellis will be fit by now as well, potentially to be on the bench as another option. So we don't have to put youth players in there. So that's what we're kind of hoping for. We're just hoping Joe Garner's fit because we really need him to be fit for this one, don't we? There's been no real talk of it. We're recording, I think, before Simmer's done his press conference. It might be out by the time we put this out, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. The run of games coming after this, though, Mike, absolutely huge, aren't they, when you look at it? 6 games where, take away the Wigan game, maybe, plenty of opportunities to get points, surely.
Well, to be honest, the 3 games before the Wigan game,
yeah,
it sounds mad the position we're in. We should be aiming for 9 points.
I think 7, I'd be happy with that.
No, I'd be happy with 7, but I mean, on a game-to-game basis, 1 by 1, we should be aiming for 3 points in all 3 of them.
Key thing for me in looking at those is do not lose to Cheltenham and do not lose to Fleetwood. They're the 2 that stand out because they're around us and we need to make sure they can't get any points to potentially pull away from us. That's the key thing for me with those 2. And obviously, like I said, the rest, it's just to see what happens. Prediction time. Match predictions score-wise, I'm still in the lead on 8, Dan on 7, and you've got 2 points now, Mike. None of us predicted Link Planch to score. Honourable mention is you said to Adam, who did predict Lavelle to score. Unfortunately, not in the right net, so it doesn't count, sadly, for him. What are you going for this one?
Well, I still haven't predicted a defeat this season, and I'm not going to change now. So I'll go for a 1-1 draw, and I'll go for Sam Lavelle to score in the right net this time.
I wonder should I take one for the team here and go for a defeat? No, I'm not going to. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I'm going to go 2-1 win with goals from Owen Moxon against the team that tried to sign him in the summer. And I'll go on Joe Garner to get the winner and properly wind up the home fans as a result. So there you go, 2-1 win. I'm going to go for. Let's hear what Dan has to say for this one.
Well, everybody got the Reading game spectacularly wrong. No surprise. But I'm feeling a little bit of Bolton vibes over a trip to the seaside. So I'm going to go for Blackpool 1, Carlisle 3. And I'm going to go for goals from Jordan Gibson, Sam Lavelle, and Ryan Edmondson.
Quite interesting goal scorers there. Should say Sam Lavelle's playing against his hometown club in this game. He's a Blackpool lad. Never played for them, but he's from Blackpool, so there you go. Right, X-Files section to finish things off. Well, let's talk first about that one we mentioned before, the Barnsley-Wickham game. Sam Cosgrove scored the only goal of this game, and what a bizarre goal it was, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, for me, it's a goal, though. For those who haven't seen it, basically, the keeper was time wasting, wasn't he? And then
He basically did that thing where the ref gave a drop ball with the keeper, dropped the ball, it fell on the floor, and the keeper just waited for Cosgrove. This was in the 91st minute or 92nd minute, and waited basically for the strike to come down so he could kill a bit more time. And he did that thing when he grabbed it at the very last minute. Cosgrove nudges into him. Now, it's one of those ones, I think, if the ref gives it, you go, oh, it's soft, but, well, you did nudge into him, fair enough. But if he doesn't give it, you go, well, you know, he's taken the mick there and he's gone down far too soft and he's lost the ball. It's his own fault. So I think either way the decision's given, I don't see a problem with it.
There was contact. I actually think calling it a nudge is a bit harsh. I wouldn't even call it a nudge. There was contact. But apparently you cannot award a penalty for a player diving in their own penalty area. You can only play on. And to be honest, it was a dive. the contact was not enough to make the keeper go down. Yeah. So keeper goes down and leaves the ball, and Cosgrove just taps it into the empty net.
Yeah, Cosgrove does the right thing. You play to the whistle, put the ball in the back of the net and see what
Luke
happens.
Blanche wouldn't have done. Luke Blanche.
No. But yeah, interestingly, so essentially he fell over and the ball just fell from his grasp, didn't it? Really, he was holding onto it tight and just dropped it for some reason. It was just bizarre. So yeah, fair play to Sam. That's a goal for him for Barnsley and a 1-0 win for them over Wickham. Andy Cook scored from the penalty spot for Bradford City in their 3-0 win at Forest Green Rovers. George Glendon also scored a penalty for Chester in their 1-1 draw at Rush Hall Olympic. I mean, it must be depressing to be a Chester fan going to a club like Rush Hall Olympic when you were in the league not that long ago. Stephen Rigg and David Simonson both scored for Workington in their, let's say, eventful 4-4 draw with Marine. I had Johnny, who's a listener to the show and who's contributed a few 6-second reviews. He came round to my house to watch the Reading game. We were both sort of half following the results and scores from that game, thinking to ourselves, bloody hell, we could have gone to watch that tonight instead and seen 8 goals instead of this dross. Manny Mampala also scored for Marine in that game, I should say. Into the weekend, George Tanner put the ball in his own net for Bristol City in their 2-1 home defeat to Norwich City. Ryan Bowman scored a hat-trick for Shrewsbury Town in their 3-2 win over Notts County in the FA Cup. Have you seen this hat-trick there, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I thought our defender was bad against Reading, but my God.
It's borderline match fixing, some of the defending there. He obviously isn't match fixing, it's just crap defending, but it was hilarious to see how bad they defended it. It was not good at all. Amari Patrick, he was on the score sheet for Sutton United in their comfortable 3-0 win over Horsham in the FA Cup. Paddy Madden, he scored for Stockport County in their 2-2 draw at Aldershot in the FA Cup as well. And Olafelo Olamola scored for Bromley in their 1-0 home win over Rochdale. He's had a really good start to life, Bromley, hasn't he? Having recovered from his injuries, he's doing really well there. Into the midweek just gone, George Glendon, he netted a penalty for the second successive game to help Chester get a 1-0 win over Brackley Town. And Reggie Lamb got his first goal for Braintree Town since signing for them in their 1-1 draw with Hampton and Richmond. And finally, just 2 other little bits of news. Nick Bollardo, he's joined Morpeth Town after leaving Stockport County. He joined as a development player, hadn't he, at Stockport? And from what I could see of his comments, having signed for Morpeth, he just wasn't very happy, was he? I think he wasn't enjoying it. And he's a North East lad, so I think it's probably worked out quite well for him to go there. And Skelmersdale United manager Pascal Chimbonda has been given a 5-match stadium ban for improper conduct.
I'd love to see this, whatever this improper conduct is, that gets you a 5-match ban.
A stadium ban, not even a 5-match, you can sit in the stands when it's fun. I mean, it's difficult in non-league, isn't it? Because you're so close to the pitch.
Yeah.
You probably have to sometimes. But yeah, interesting start to life for him at Skem, isn't it? I think it's fair to say. And that's it, Mike. That's over for another episode. You're not going to be at the game this weekend, are you? You're working. But you may well be driving around the Blackpool area. You don't know yet, so that's strange for you. But 2,000 Blues fans going down should be a fantastic atmosphere, and just praying they can put a performance on for the Blues, aren't we, really?
Yeah.
That's what we want. We'll be back next week with a review of the Blackpool game and then look ahead to the Northampton game, which, as we've said before, looks like a huge game. You're going to be at that one, aren't you? We're going up on the train for that, so that should be quite a good one. But yeah, other than that, not much else to say other than thanks everyone for listening and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
Stop listening, Regan. There's no bonus content this week.